everyone. Thank you to our board members and our staff and NHA members for joining us today. I'd like to kick off this meeting. It's 12:34. Blanca, can you go ahead and take the roll call?
Yep. I'll start with you. Yvette Cabrera.
Here.
Aralis Hernandez.
Here.
Julio Cesar Chavez.
Here.
McNally Torres.
Here.
Luis Joel Mendez Gonzalez.
Here.
Adriana Chavira.
Here.
David Cordero Mercado.
Hello.
Sarah Betancourt.
Here.
Melissa Makaya.
Here.
Samantha Rivera.
Here.
Nancy Prayer Johnson.
Here.
And making sure that Dunya hasn't logged on since I last looked, or Steve Solis, who's supposed to be representing Christy. Okay, not yet. Okay, but we have a quorum.
Okay, great.
Oh, and then let me just say that we have Edward Franco, our student member, and then we have Janet and Ivan as our guests. And
Okay.
and Rita, sorry, and Rita Garza.
Yes, and I'll be introducing all the guests as well when we get to their point in the agenda. All right, so first thing we have on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. We have two sets of minutes that the board received. One was for our August 5th board meeting. The second is for the August 2nd executive board meeting that the executive board had regarding the audit. We should have approved it at our last board meeting. That was my bad. I forgot to bring it up. So I just want to, make sure everyone's had a chance to review the minutes and to ask if there are any edits or changes that Blanca needs to make to them. On either one of them? No? Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to approve the August 5th and August 2nd, 2023 meeting minutes?
I think I have to do it separately, but I move to first approve the August 5th executive board meeting minutes.
Okay, great. And do we have a second?
Second.
That's Sarah.
Sarah?
All right. Yep. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
And then I
Hold on. Anyone opposed? And any abstentions for those who weren't at those meetings? All right, go ahead, Blanca.
and then I to move to approve the meeting minutes from August
2nd.
2nd. Thank you. So sorry. August 2nd.
It's Rita. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just admitted Luis and Marilyn.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Blanca. You make a motion to approve the August 2nd.
Second meeting minutes.
Okay. All right. Do we have a second?
A second.
That's Nancy. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And any abstentions?
I abstain. I was not present on August 2nd.
So David abstains. And Adriana?
I abstain too, because I mean, it's an executive board meeting, so there were only a handful of the board members there. So not everyone, I guess, is able to approve it.
All right. So
good.
Adriana, David,
And Johnny, I will abstain from both. Thanks.
Ani, yes. So just make sure to note that, Blanca, for
Okay.
those who weren't present. Okay. All right. So we have a full agenda today, but I just want to pause for a moment to highlight some of the work of our board members who during our conference in Miami shared some highlights of what we've been able to accomplish this past year that's aligned with our strategic plan. As many of you know, in the summer of 2022, we approved the 5-year strategic plan where we laid out our priorities and goals for NAHJ starting in 2023. There are goals that in the plan that require funding, others that don't. Some are staff responsibilities, and others are the board's responsibility. So as our staff work to fundraise money for the goals that require funding, the board's committees have laid out goals and priorities that are aligned with the plan that didn't require funding, but that we could accomplish this year. So I want to acknowledge Melissa Macaya, who for the past year oversaw that process as chair of the Strategic Planning Communications Committee, as well as working with our Strategic Plan Communications consultant, Rita Garza, who I'm going to introduce later on. We hired her this past spring to ensure that this and all the board's work that's in service of our members is communicated effectively with everyone from our chapter leaders directly to our members, to our funders, and to the greater journalism community. Melissa's going to continue to be part of that committee, but has stepped down as the chair of the committee. So I just want to thank her for her thoughtful leadership, for her dedication to this position as well. I'm excited about this next step that we're taking to implement the plan, which Rita will outline for us today. But it's with much gratitude that I acknowledge Melissa for doing this work to get us here. So thank you, Melissa. Today, we're also going to be reviewing those committees and task forces that we approved last year, and I'll be asking a few of those chairs to share just a few highlights of the work that we've been doing and what their plans are for the coming year. I'm particularly proud of the investigative task force, which has been working to complete a survey of newsroom investigative teams and release some preliminary results of that survey at our Miami conference. McNelly Torres, who's the co-chair of the task force, will share some information about an essay series that the task force just launched to highlight the work and to get the word out to our members as well, to help encourage newsrooms to complete the survey as well. We also have NAHJ Sports Task Force Co-Chair Joe Rodriguez with us here today, as well as Task Force member Danny Corrales, who's joining us to discuss the work they're tackling. The situation facing Latino sports journalists is bleak. Latinos are severely underrepresented on sports beats in America's newsrooms, and our task force is working to address that gap. Lastly, I also want to acknowledge our fellow LGBTQI+ journalists who are celebrating their annual NLGJA conference this week in Philadelphia, where one of our fellow board members, Region 1 Director David Cordero Mercado, spoke today at a plenary. The plenary is called Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation: How Healing Through Storytelling Changes Individuals, Communities, and Newsrooms. And it examined how racial healing can transform communities and change newsrooms, as well as how to engage in difficult conversations around race and intersectional identity. So thank you, David, for always representing NAHJ and speaking so passionately about the issues you cover. And then lastly, I just want to, yes, and I just also want to note that the board has been working diligently to interview candidates for our open executive director position. I want to thank all our members and allies who have referred candidates to us. We are still accepting applications, which can be sent to recruiting@nahj.org. So if you know of anyone interested in applying, the job description is posted on our website, on LinkedIn, and various other places. So now I'm going to hand it over to Rita Garza, who is the head of Rhythm Strategy Consulting. It's a boutique consulting firm. She specializes in organizational strategy, and we'll be going over the planned proposal that we'll be implementing soon. Take it away, Rita.
Great, thank you. Can everyone see my screen? I've enlarged it, but I can do it a little more. Yes?
Yep.
All right. Well, as Yvette talked about, I'll take you back just to how did we get here. So y'all retained me back at the end of May, and we had a kickoff meeting in June. I talked about at the board meeting, the first phase of the work, the scope of work, was really to interview as many stakeholders as I could before the conference and at convention and at convention. Because to develop any type of effective communications plan and action plan and timeline, you really have to evaluate the existing systems, tools, structure, people that exist that are going to help support this effort. And so all the things that we did for the convention, we have now turned the page and are looking at what would be the long-term strategic communications goals. Now, I'm only with y'all until mid-January, but I've created this plan so that it can be strengthened and used, updated. It's a really good template, and it can be used ongoing by the NAHJ staff as well. So I am focusing on 3 major goals for this communication strategy. And number 1, I talked about a little bit for the convention work. It's to review and strengthen the national NAHJ communications channels effectiveness, capacity, and focus. And by the way, this is very high level. I'm going to speed through it. There's a much longer version that I've gone through with Yvette and the NAHJ staff several times. You have listserv, you have all your social media channels, you have direct email addresses, and then you also have this very important layer of the regional directors, which I'll talk about later. So really evaluating all of that and seeing what needs to either increase capacity, effectiveness, shift focus, whatever that looks like. I've gone through that process, and now we need to do that work. I'll go over the creative concept in just a second, but I want to launch a targeted awareness education campaign that consistently highlights your strategic plan results that has a specific name, branding, and visual identity. So all of your key stakeholders get accustomed to seeing the updates, understanding what that means to the 5-year plan, and directing people to your website that want to learn more or have more detail. And then third, which is out of scope, but I always, when I come upon important discovery, even if it's out of scope, I always like to include it because I feel like that work's been done. So I should make sure y'all have it. I heard over and over again the critical layer of the regional directors being the liaison between the board and the professional chapter leaders, and how important that infrastructure is. And so we want to strengthen that and decentralize communications through the regional directors to these chapter officers. Because if you break it up, if you have, say, the 25 active professional chapters and each regional director has their group, you stand a much better chance by strengthening this system and having consistent report out and consistent connection from not just what the board is doing and all of the board committees and the NAHJ staff, but what the professional chapters are doing, and getting them connected to the strategic plan and how they play a part in it is really important. So the creative concept that I'm introducing today is the idea of the strategy snapshot campaign. And this is your education information awareness campaign that we're going to leverage across all NAHJ communications channels with these periodic updates. The specific timing and cadence we have to work out because, of course, it has to be integrated in your existing. While there's not an existing communications plan at NAHJ, you do have certain initiatives in play. For example, you highlighting the conference and expo that's next year or anything else. So we always want to be integrated and mindful of all of the things y'all are communicating and where this campaign can fit in and be effective. Like any good plan, we've got to review all of the performers. And so when we look at the board of directors, of course, Yvette as a national president to mobilize and manage the regional directors and the strategic planning implementation committee, and really all of the different committees. The strategic planning implementation committee is the committee that calls for, collects, and compiles the results from the other groups. And then again, needing the regional directors to really connect and engage professional chapter leaders through direct emails, text messages, virtual calls, whatever it takes to get them to create a pipeline of their results to the regional directors, and then the regional directors can get it to the national staff. Yaneth and Yunin obviously are really important because they manage the listserv tool, and they also will participate in compiling the NAHJ staff results because all of their day-to-day work on different programs are also part of the strategic plan and the results that need to be communicated. Ivan is a key partner internally because he manages and controls your social media channels, your website, all of the assets that we're going to need, and then obviously working together for the different hashtags and the different call to actions. But again, principally always driving people to your homepage, and you already have a landing page, and we're going to strengthen this, but you already have a landing page with your strategic roadmap here. So we want to drive people to it as much as possible. You have Carlos Perez, who is your graphic designer. We're going to need him to design multiple templates so that, again, a certain look, color, feel, identity for this strategy snapshot campaign can be recognizable consistently. I will overall project manage and work with the strategic planning implementation committee to package content, to translate. We want obviously high level information, but things that are in bite-sized pieces that can again be easily posted via this campaign. Going through just high level the goals and objectives, again, completed audit and currently working to strengthen the NAHJ communications channels and then the activities under that, especially building what KPIs are going to be important, whether those are open rates, click rates, social engagement, web page traffic, all of the, we're going to look at those. And Yvonne has already been in the background. I met with him and he's looking at what they have collected historically and what's possible to collect now. Again, develop, strengthen systems and tools. And this is where it's going to make or break this strategy, is making sure that if it's the Excel spreadsheet that y'all have been using, that we make sure everyone knows how to go in and type in their results under the specific priority that it supports. Again, partnering with the regional directors to consistently reach professional chapter officers, making sure the committee is working with the board committees for collection of information, and same for staff. Compiling these results and creating a content calendar is going to be critical, and that's something I will do in partnership with Yvonne, and making sure that we're looking at all of the different channels and creating a cadence and a tempo so that y'all are consistently communicating strategic snapshots several times a month. And it's and again, it needs to be recognizable. This is out of scope, but I included it because I think it's part of the communication strategy for y'all overall and long term. I heard over and over again the need that professional chapter officers have to understand when they take their position, how to work with the national office, how to use various social media channels, how to develop their profiles of local events, how to submit things, how to connect to the overall strategic direction, how to issue press releases, all the things that they need. And so I just listed a few, but simple toolkits that they can get when they become officers, and how that is translated, or y'all conduct training webinars, whatever that looks like, but they need that support, and they need those toolkits, and they need that consistent support via their regional directors again. I think I'm recommending strongly that there be a virtual training as soon as possible for professional chapter officers so that they understand the communications responsibilities that they have. A lot of them are doing great things locally, but if the national staff doesn't know about it, or y'all don't know about it, we can't communicate it. And the more we can include them and integrate them into their success or their successful efforts that support the strategic direction, the better off everybody is. Also, this is out of scope, but I wanted to make sure we included some of the things we didn't get to do at the 2023 convention, but leveraging your national convention. And I gave several ideas here about how to create some marketing and communication support. So when the professional chapter leaders hit the convention, they understand that it really is about their networking and their connecting and engagement, but also how their local performance rolls up into national performance. I think there should be an in-person training workshop during convention that is exclusive to chapter officers. I liked some of the things that organically happened during the national chapter meeting. That should be formalized because they are desperate for connection and proven practices, and getting to know one another and supporting one another. I think there should be a mandatory attendance culture for the national annual meeting, because all chapter officers get free registration. And so getting them to attend and participate. I gave some ideas around how to market, whether it's a consistent drumbeat of come to the national annual meeting, but then also for D, making sure that y'all are integrating their results into the national annual meeting presentation. And then perhaps you can consider, I don't know if it's doable for 2024, but maybe considering an award to the professional chapter that has the most accomplishments aligned with the strategic plan. And again, I'm happy to brainstorm any of these other ideas, but my main concentration is going to be on 1, 2, and 3, and then I'm going to work through Yvette and whoever replaces Melissa to make sure that the regional directors are making that connection and engagement with their respective chapters. I know that's very quick, but wanted to just pause now and see if anybody has any questions or discussion items.
Board members, do you have any questions or any comments? Marilyn, go ahead.
Hi, Rita. Thanks for doing all this. We really appreciate you going through all this stuff and giving us the specifics. I think you've noted a couple things there that are of interest. And I guess the question that I have is, one is, how many chapter members did you talk to? And also, what about, did you talk to them about specific things that we could do with them, to include them in stuff? Because one of the things that came up at the convention when we had the meeting with the chapters was trying to, get feedback from them on their programs and shared programs and stuff like that have been successful. So did any of that stuff come up at all?
Yes, and you'll see it embedded here in the things that I just talked about. I talked to over 20 people, and it was a combination of board, staff, chapter officers, members. And so I feel like I talked to quite a few people, and the information was pretty consistent. Again, over and over, the regional director role is critical. It's a critical layer between the chapter officers and the board and the staff. In support of the staff, they are a very small staff and have limited resources. And so the more decentralized communication can be, the better. We went over all the different tools, how chapter officers and members use social media, the listserv, all of the tools that are available to them. There is never going to be a tool that works for everyone. And so for this kind of campaign and the scope of my work to, again, communicate strategic plan results to your key stakeholders, we're going to have to use all of the tools that you have at NAHJ, and then really, really depend on the regional directors to get more engagement from the chapter officers. Did I answer all your questions?
Yeah, I just have one more question.
Mhm.
I hope that perhaps the regional directors could consider running the elections, the chapter elections. I know some of them have struggled to find people to help run their elections, so that might help, sort of boost that engagement, from the chapter leaders, if they know that they have the regional directors to lean on during the elections and stuff like that. That would be one thing that I would hope somebody would consider along the way.
On the question, Marilyn, that you had about what tools specifically they've been asking for, in the listening sessions that the regional directors and I have been having with the chapter leaders, cited, as Rita said, communications training, also legal training. They from the basics of communicating what they're doing, but also communicating with other newsroom leaders within their cities. And then, so, and we do have, Yaneth is working on setting up trainings, not only communications trainings, not only for the board, but also for the chapter leaders this month. So we do already have that in place. That was something that we were talking about before Rita presented us with these recommendations. But they definitely want guidance for that, including also how to put their budgets together, financial guidance. So some of the things also that you have recommended as well. So that's what we need to put in place. But it's a lot, but essentially what Rita is saying is like a toolkit that could bring all of those elements together that we automatically do after each orientation for the chapter leader, so that they don't come into these positions, especially the new members who are serving for the first time in these positions at the chapter level, that they're not caught like, deer in the headlights of, asking, what do I do? That it's clear that they've got that sort of developmental training happening.
Well, I think that's great, and I applaud Rita, effort. I think it's great. I think her recommendations are really, long overdue. And I think she's really been comprehensive. Her presentations are pretty comprehensive. And I think it just reiterates and reinforces what needs to happen to help the chapters grow and, and help the leaders, help us get more people engaged in the chapters as well.
Yep. Luis Joel?
Yes, thank you, Rita, for working on this incredible document. I was really impressed by all the recommendations that you made. It's amazing, and I know it will be very beneficial for NAHJ. I just wanted to know what, from your point of view, we could make to make this a long-term effort, because the strategy delineates some initiatives that we can do for the next convention that will be next summer, but how we can make this something long-term, like an ongoing effort for the next years.
I did talk to Yaneth because y'all, and I talked to David again, right when we were putting this together. At the end of May, one of the critical needs is obviously communications, professional communications support. And y'all hired Yvonne in March, and I know he was really focused on the convention and some of the more urgent needs, but having resources and focus on communication strategy, number one, is essential, especially for your organization. Professionals who understand how to develop plans and how to talk to key stakeholders and assess what's effective and what's not effective is really important. And then building a plan like this and slowly and building the priorities, because again, you can't do everything. And so the reason I included that my out of scope work is that these are important systems that have to be in place. And for me, if we don't carefully manage your social media channels and make sure your chapter officers know how to effectively use listserv, if y'all create another kind of channel that it is developed, launched, trained, people are trained repeatedly, and constantly managing a tool. A communications tool is only as effective as the people that are using it. And so that's what I heard over and over is there's lots of things out there, but people aren't as effective as using it. So this is the kind of plan that can be inserted in anything that y'all are doing, and a comprehensive plan could be mirrored out of this. What are your top priorities what are your top 5 priorities to communicate, not just the strategic plan results, but what are the other top priorities? So having the right systems and tools, because I can't, like we're not going to be able to communicate anything if the committees don't report their results in an effective way, consistently using the same tool, so that we can pull that and create a content, have that pipeline to have good content, because we're going to have to abbreviate everything. And again, drive traffic to your existing web pages and strengthen these. Yvette's going to work on a summary. This should have a lot more information at the top to help people engage in who all is contributing to your strategic results. There's a lot of people, staff, board, committees, task forces, professional chapters. You don't get that at all here. And so there's other things that the recommendations that I've made, but always to have an effective stream of communication, it is a combination of very strong systems. And again, regional directors are critical. They are critical for y'all. And I've talked to Yvette about that, really doing more training focused on the regional directors. So having good, solid systems that you've recognized are key threshold participants into any kind of communications, having tools that everybody understands how to use and how they're going to get training, and then having a good plan that says, this is what we're going to do. Here's when we're going to do it. Here are the performers. And again, there's multiple pages that I took out of this for this high level. I have a timeline. I have other assumptions. It's important to recognize culture shifts that have to be made, behavior shifts that have to be made, role clarity that is needed. Again, who's doing what, when, and then constantly course correcting. Again, as I evaluated y'all's social media channels, y'all are going to have to eventually create a social media boost and ad budget, because you just can't get visibility with organic posts anymore. So again, those more long-term items where you have budget to do that. But this is really critical, because if I don't go over who all the key performers are, then it's a mystery. And then in the timeline that I've created, it's like, if this person doesn't do this job by this time, then the domino effect is important. So leadership and accountability is all part of that too. So I think that's a long answer for how do you make this successful, but it's an important discussion. And Yvette and I talked about that it's really important for y'all to talk about, if you really want to inform your key stakeholders of your strategic plan results, then there has to be a commitment to systems, tools, structure, all of those important elements.
Yep. Thank you. Julio Cesar and then Nancy.
Thank you so much, Rita. Apologies if my internet connection is spotty. This all seems great. I agree. The more we decentralize, the more we make things institutional, but decentralized so that they're not reliant on our staff to be running everything, the better the organization will fare in general. I just wanted to chime in and say I completely agree, not just with everything, but with promoting the annual meeting in a better way. One of the things that we're doing already is we're looking at changing the dates, instead of holding it on Saturday, holding it on the day that more people are more involved. Beyond that, I agree that we should really push this a lot more, because essentially it's our shareholder meeting. Our members are essentially our shareholders, and having them show up, not just our chapter leaders, absolutely, but more people, it's a way to our members have a responsibility to their organization as much as we have a responsibility to their organization. And I think that, having people attend that meeting is really going to give people a better sense of ownership and have them step up as members of the organization as well. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Nancy.
Rita, thank you. This is awesome. I like how comprehensive and clear it is. The goals and objectives are in line with everything. My only question, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but in a couple of times I've reviewed it now, I don't see anything about surveys. And personally, I'm a big fan of, surveys, just a simple Google form for various things. So I know that you all have the listening sessions with chapters and lots of different things, right, for the conference and all of that. But do we already have just a Google form that's nice and branded for different things, like for different functions, as far as getting feedback after the conference, but also the things that we're talking about now, like communication and what chapters need. So that way we have a way they can easily answer and give feedback. And then also so we can have a paper trail of data as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a big fan of getting feedback and information. And so for my scope of work, that's why it was important for me to do as many Zoom. They were either in person or Zoom calls to collect all of the data that informed and supports my role. I think the NAHJ use of surveys, I'm going to punt to Yaneth and Yvonne, because that's really their scope of work as they consistently figure out how to develop a good survey that people will respond to. Because again, I asked a lot of questions about surveys that have been done in the past. And again, getting response is developing a nice, good, clean, branded survey is wonderful. And that's an important tool. But if you don't get a good response rate, it's not effective. And so I think those are the things that those are a lot of the questions I asked, and I'm still asking of NAHJ staff is, there's not a lot of response rate. And if you're looking at your membership, and I'm just going to say 3,000 just to play with that number, if you have 25 professional chapters and that represents 20% of your membership, then for me, that's your focus, is get those folks informed and engaged, because that's your lowest hanging fruit. And again, regional directors are going to be critical to that. And if you can harness that portion of your membership and get that portion of your membership engaged and responding and feeding the pipeline, whether it's feedback or local results or their experience at the convention, whatever that is, that's what you need, and you should prioritize. And I would prioritize that just the way that I did here, because you can't boil the ocean. Y'all don't have enough resources for that. And the staff does not have enough resources. It is a very, very small staff. So I only encourage surveys after you've done the systems work of creating engagement and connection.
Thank you.
All right.
Does that make
McNally?
sense?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that we did have a survey during the conference that it was very well responded, and I am analyzing that survey right now, and I'm planning to write a memo to leave to the next committee, since I was the chair of programming last year, to leave to the next committee. And I did hear a lot. I had a lot of people during the conference stopping me and thanking me for the programming and the fact that they were getting training. So there was a lot of things that were very popular, and I was very happy for that. And we just have to continue. I mean, people were really excited at the conference in spite of everything else. So that is very, and some of the things that I've seen in the survey are some of the things that I've been complaining about for many, many years, which is kind of funny because it's like, you're preaching to the choir here, you know? So that's gonna come. I'll be happy to share with, obviously I will share with the whole board when I'm done with that.
Great.
Thank you, McNally. Luis Joel and then Johnny.
Yes, sorry, I just want to ask this last question to Rita. Rita, next year we'll have an election. The NAHJ members are going to elect the next board, and I really wanted to know what you would recommend to really make the next board members, if they are new board members, enforce the strategic planning that the board already approved. Is there a way you recommend that we can make them aware of the goals that we are following according to the strategic plan, and how we could do it based on your opinion?
Yeah, for me, the strategic plan really is owned in partnership between the staff and the board. And for me, in my experience, the staff is the one that really holds the continuity, and it is board orientation, which again is a system, to build that system so that there is consistent board orientation. So they're brought in understanding that you have a 5-year strategic plan, and they should have already been hearing, again, all of these results through this strategic snapshot campaign. So they know they're joining something. They're not going to come in and reinvent the wheel. And leadership of the national staff is critical on that. And then orientation and understanding that you're coming into an existing infrastructure, structure, systems, tools, outcomes, outputs, all of those things. And so for me, that is always going to be how you manage continuity.
Johnny?
Hi, thank you. One quick question. So can you also expand on the plan to decentralize communications? You talked about it briefly or touched upon it, but can you also explain how that would work How would it involve exactly the regional director, which is usually the middleman or the middlewoman, as opposed to the local chapter leaders? Because we do have a lot of chapters, and I don't know if that communication plan would be pertaining to each individual chapter or to each individual region for that chapter, if it's a student chapter as opposed to let's say a state chapter like the Nevada or the New Mexico. How would that work?
So when Yvette and I talked this past week, that to me, the regional director should be pulled together. I want to go over this plan with them. Again, the tool, we have to establish the tool. And again, the timeline and all that detailed work is not, I did not go over that, but that's in part of the timeline, is that the centralized tool, if y'all are going to continue to contribute your results on a spreadsheet that's on a Google Drive, that NAHJ staff manages and stores. Of course, I'll have access to look at it, but you need to establish these tools first and the systems first. So we need to make sure that we all agree on what tool is going to be used and that everybody has access to it and everybody understands what their role is. I'm in favor of pulling the regional directors together separately and making sure that they understand the role that they play in this. Just the same way the Strategic Planning Implementation Committee has been asking for all of the 15 to 20 committees that you'll have asking for their results. Same thing. So those systems have to work. And that's what's here in the high level objectives, is that these systems have to work. So the committees have to be reporting. Regional directors, this is new for them. So we need to take time and make sure they understand that. And again, that's a lot of the feedback I got. There were chapter officers that had never even met their regional director. They didn't even know the name of their regional director in the past. That's what we want to swiftly change. And so we need to start that system where regional directors are conducting virtual Zoom meetings, whatever that means, monthly, quarterly, whatever that looks like, but starting that engagement, because that's going to be the slower content to come in. What I'm expecting is NAHJ staff is conducting strategic impact work every day. The committees are also doing that. So we get those rolling first, because you have a new system that you have to really strengthen and make sure that you have all of the people. And again, role clarity, they understand, regional directors understand that they need to engage first with their chapter officers, create that cadence of engagement, and then educate them on all of the local efforts that they're conducting and how they connect to the strategic plan. And so I would expect the regional directors to have a strategic plan session with the chapter officers, because again, all chapter officers should know they are part of the ecosystem of NAHJ. If they don't know that there's a 5-year roadmap and here are the ways that they contribute to that, then we're really failing that layer of leadership and contributors. So there's systematic ways to make sure that that happens. But again, everybody has to do their part, because it's going to take probably 3 to 6 months to activate that layer and get it going. But in the meantime, you have a much clearer pipeline, and the committees are accustomed to reporting the results, just like the national staff is. But I believe that new system and layer is going to be effective for y'all, because again, it's all part of decentralizing it.
Johnny, one of the things I shared with Rita is that through the advocacy committee's work, which is all of the regional directors and the listening sessions we've been having with the chapter leaders, the discussions have not only focused on advocacy, but everything else that the chapter leaders need, and that it's been helpful to open up those lines of communication. And some of you, including you, Johnny, had mentioned that you wanted to continue doing that on a quarterly basis. And so in those quarterly meetings, these discussions around the strategic plan and what we're doing and how that fits in with the work that they're doing and how their work fits in with what the national organization is doing. Mm-hmm. Those are what we need to set up. And so as far as next steps, the strategic planning committee like Rita was saying, we have some systems in place for the strategic plan work that we've been doing with the committees. We've got the Excel sheet that we've been working off of. The question is, what systems of accountability do we want to set up now for like the regional directors? And so the committee is going to be working on that as far as next steps, to work in conjunction with the regional directors, who will also have a say in how this is rolled out as well, so that we can figure out a consistent way to communicate, not just generally with the chapter leaders, but specifically how the work that they're doing and that we're doing tied to the strategic plan is being accomplished. Let's see, Marilyn.
Yes, Rita, I have a question. What do you mean by out of scope recommendation? That means you're not going to work on that, right? Is that, am I interpreting that correctly?
Right, that's really out of the scope of my work with y'all. But again, I've spent a lot of time on it because I feel like I got all of the information. I want y'all to have it because I heard it over and over. And then I'm going to offer my recommendations and my professional experience of how to break through. That's why I went ahead and created 4 and 5 for y'all, because I feel like it's part of the entire ecosystem. And so it needs to be done, right? It needs to be done, but it wouldn't be something that I would do or project manage.
But will you be around to inform the new AD, new executive director of these recommendations?
Yes.
You know, and explain sort of, you know, what's important and what's not important. I just want to make sure, like Ms. Joy says, that this stuff is carried out, you know, as quickly as possible, because once it becomes part of the culture, then it's a lot harder, you know, to get rid of. And so I just worry that with the turnover of you know, the board, you know, turn over every 2 years, you know, that we might lose some of this good work that's being done, you know, and being presented and bring the recommendations that we have. So that's just my concern about that.
Yeah, no, that of course, absolutely. I'm happy to debrief anyone and explain these things. And again, that's part of, back to Luis's question, is having these systems in place at the staff level increases your chances of consistency and continuity. And these are things that really need to be in place for y'all. I've researched and reviewed and read and looked through everything I could get my hands on. And y'all really do need these systems, because if you have existing systems and existing tools that are consistently used by your 3 or 4 different groups, staff, board committees, and professional chapters, then you stand the chance to have much more continuity for results. And that's why I went through, and I want to talk a lot about, and I've been talking with the staff too, about the importance of systems. Because if regional, like here I take it, if regional directors don't have it in their job description, and they don't get an orientation, and they don't understand that their number 1 role is to engage existing professional chapters, and then number 2 is to, and I'm making this up, but number 2 is to research and evaluate where new chapters can be formed, then they don't know where to spend their time. And if you say as a regional director, you should be spending 75% of your time strengthening your engagement with chapter officers, making sure they understand their role, that they make their own little mini strategic plan. Because again, if you talked to a chapter officer and said, hey, throughout your year, try to do these 3 things that roll up to the strategic plan, and then everything else you do is your choice. Because they are chapter officers, there should be some kind of agreement on where focus is going to be. And regional directors are a role you already have. So clarify it, train, and hold people accountable for that. Because I'm not in favor of ever inventing a lot of new stuff until I know how well your existing things are working. Again, systems, tools, structure, people. If it's skill development, I've talked to Yvonne on some of these things. Having a comprehensive plan for y'all year over year is important. This can easily slide into any plan, because you're always going to need to have 3 to 5 different focus areas as an organization. So again, long answer to just talk about how you build and start to build continuity and consistency and year over year results. Because y'all are doing so much, people just don't know it. They don't know it succinctly and consistently. And if they get a strategy snapshot a couple of times a month that has its own distinct look and feel and drives people to this web page, we strengthen this web page, you strengthen the regional director layer, you're going to be way better off than you were a year ago.
Agreed. Thank you.
Christy?
Hi, yeah, I think a lot of these are good ideas, but truthfully, as a regional director with 4 professional chapters, some of them don't really seem feasible to me, like holding monthly meetings with each of the chapters. It's hard even to have chapter meetings sometimes just because of all the scheduling conflicts and, you know, having to do that with 4. I think even like the mandatory attendance, I've spoken to a lot of officers who are, you know, smaller markets like San Diego, who don't, even though that their registration is paid for, maybe the LA one might be feasible, but going to Miami, paying, you know, airfare and taking time off unpaid, in many cases they have to, isn't within their budget. So, I mean, I like some of these ideas, but I think we need to, you know, think of others as well.
Christy, this is one of the most important things I can emphasize for y'all, is that you can't boil the ocean. I'm not talking about you're never, by the way, you're never going to activate all your professional chapters for whatever reasons. So again, you look at percentages. If you can start working with 1 and get 1 really connected and then move to another, it's the systems approach that is going to make a difference. And so, and again, that's why Melissa heard me and Yvette heard me when even pre-convention, I said, don't put all of your eggs in that basket, because convention is one point in time where only 10% of your membership is there at best. And they are inundated with networking, engagement, the programming, training, going to these classes, meeting people, connecting. It's hard to add anything on that's not, again, part of your structure. If you created work sessions and things like that were part of the curriculum for their training, that's different. But it's hard. And again, it's 10% maximum of your membership. And so that's what I look at, is where are you going to find people? Because again, if you can get 10, 15, 20% of your membership engaged at a higher level, then you'll have something that y'all don't currently have. And so the systems approach works. And whether you have 4 professional chapters or 6, start with 1 or 2. And if it's quarterly that works, or it's one-on-one that works, you're going to have to try several different things by region because of the uniqueness of territories and chapters. And you got to start with your strong ones. And so maybe y'all do that. Maybe you have a different kind of, maybe it's not by region, maybe it's by country, and you pull the 4, 5, 6 of your stronger chapters, but you have to have a systems approach.
Nancy? Last question.
I'm just curious, when it looks like you've done a lot of work in evaluating, I know that's one of the goals there is to evaluate NAHJ, but just from what you know and the talks you've had and the work you've done already, what letter grade would you give NAHJ for communication right now?
Well, that's tough because I don't want to feel like people are not performing well. Y'all have not had the investment in communications for quite a few years. That position was eliminated years ago. It was just put back in staff. It's very difficult to have a strong communication strategy without somebody owning it. And I gave that feedback or in May, again, about resources. Even in looking at your media relations, y'all's media relations strategy has been largely responsive. So you respond to something, but you don't have proactive because there's not enough resources to cultivate stories, pitch them, and then follow through with them. So when you look at just how little resources you have to be really disciplined on what is meaningful for NAHJ and what can you do with the resources you have. And so you have very little resources. You need to plug them in where they're going to make a difference. And you need to make everyone responsible for communications the way that y'all are structured now. Yvonne, you could have a 3-person communications team, and y'all are so large as far as all of the different areas you cover. They would still have more work. In the more detailed plan, when you just look at your communications channels alone, just trying to manage your website homepage, your monthly digital newsletter, your listserv, you have e-blast, you have direct emails, and then you have 4 social media channels. So right there is a lot to manage, and one person cannot even begin to manage all of that. And that doesn't even include media strategy, brand strategy. There's about 16 different disciplines in marketing and communication. So again, you have to really pick. But for this, the scope of this project was just to make sure that y'all start getting your strategic plan results known to your key stakeholders is a start. Because if people don't know what you do and how effective you are, and that you actually have a plan, and again, back to your homepage, nowhere on your homepage is the strategic plan at all, right? So we would want to plug that in somewhere, just so anybody that we drive traffic to that's even looking at the convention, they can see that you have a vision, and this vision is getting results across your different groups. It's just not on the staff to produce strategic plan results. And so there's things that we can do right now to improve, and that's going to be the most important thing, is what can we improve over time. So then later for y'all in a year or 2, you will have a much stronger approach to disciplined, focused communications on what matters. On what matters. You can spend all day long on something that doesn't matter because you have priorities 1 through 10. They're competing priorities, but you're only going to be able to do 1 through 3. And that's hard because you want to do a lot of different things, but you really can't.
Yep. Thank you. All right. Thank you everyone for your great questions. Thank you, Rita, for your fabulous work. We really appreciate it. We know we have a lot to tackle here, but the committee is going to work in conjunction with you and the staff to make sure that we follow up on these next steps. And it's particularly important because, as you know, we have our 40th anniversary coming up. We talk a lot about member engagement and making sure that the members are engaged with these processes, that, you know, the behind the scenes work that it takes to put the conferences together, to put the 40th anniversary work together. We want them connected and engaged because it helps everything that we do be a lot more robust and stronger. So thank you for helping us move along on this process in such a meaningful way.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to see all of you, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up on the agenda, we have the board committee list review, which, as I mentioned earlier, we approved last year. And I've been connecting with the committee chairs and co-chairs to double check to make sure that, you know, the work that the committees and task force have been doing, that they want to continue doing that work. As part of that, I'm asking, and we'll be asking, just as we've done in the past with the committees, the task force chairs to present to the board so that the board members understand the work that's happening behind the scenes on the work with the task forces. So I'm going to hand it over to Joe Rodriguez right now, who serves as the co-chair of the NAHJ Sports Task Force, along with Ileana Limon Romero, who is an LA Times sports editor. Joe has won 2 National Sports Emmy Awards and has worked for more than 15 years in the sports news industry for some of the top broadcast companies in the country, including ESPN, Telemundo, Fox Sports. So I want to welcome you, Joe, so you can outline some of the work that your task force is doing.
Thank you, Yvette. Good to meet. I haven't met most of you, but I've met some of you. I see the names and I do recognize, some of them. So, but first of all, thank you very much for the time. I think this is something that's super important for us. Unfortunately, Ileana could not be with us today because she is in France. They're getting ready for the Olympics and the coverage for the LA Times. But I think that probably the most important thing and the biggest takeaway that I would like at the end of the day, once this meeting is done for us, is for most of you guys to have some clarity and understanding of what the sports task force is doing, and also like its importance and its significance just overall across the board. So that being said, I think that just to add some context and not to, to go into full details, just this past convention, it was a little bit rough. I think that's just the way that I'll put it. And I think that, it's funny that Rita mentioned communication, but I think communication ended up being a big, issue as to why a lot of things just kind of fell out of place. And it was challenging, to be at the conference and to deal with partners that were a little disgruntled. But at the end of the day, we survived it. And I think that, now we're at a point in time where we can essentially, come to this board and basically introduce ourselves and let you guys know like what our goals are and our strategy that we came up with is, and it's all tied to that 5-year process, the 5-year strategy that NAHJ has that dated back to last year. So I wanted to quickly share, if I can, my screen. It says that it's disabled.
Yvonne, can you make him a co-host so he can share his screen?
I'm not sure if I can since I'm not. Okay, yeah.
I just did it.
You did? Okay, great. Let me try it. Do you guys see my screen there? Great. I won't go through this in detail, but just basically, just to kind of like outline some of the things that that we're going to be working on, and obviously not just this year, but in the coming years. But the vision and mission, pretty straightforward, right? Like our goal is to make sure that Latino journalists continue to get that representation, which is lacking. We had this conversation with Yvette and Janet earlier, the end of the year, where one of the things that concerns us is the fact that there's just this whole generation of journalists that ended up just dropping out of the workforce because of lack of opportunities, because of lack of connections, what have you. And it's something that's very concerning to us. And that's why like that's going to continue to be one part of the mission here. Leadership and structure, obviously, like for us as co-chairs, Leanne and I have done this already for the past 2 years, but what we want to do is continue to grow our board, and in addition to that, continue to groom the next generation of leaders, so that way other folks are able to take over once we're ready to move on, and also establish our own independent committees that are going to help us manage the communication with NAHJ for the conference and any other things that we're working on. Membership growth and awareness, obviously, it's super important. We understand that at the end of the day, just because people want to join the task force, it's great, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that they do become NAHJ members, and that is the key, right? They need to reap these benefits by becoming a member of NAHJ first and foremost, and if they want to become part of the task force, then obviously these are the other benefits that come into play. Mid-career development is something that, again, it's huge, and that's part of and connection to what I just mentioned, right? We want to make sure that as folks enter the workforce, that they see a path in growth, right? And that's what ended up happening ultimately with these folks that we talked about, this lost generation. There was no path for them for a variety of reasons. And what we want to try to do is make sure that, the folks that are in this middle career end up getting the opportunities that they deserve and don't eventually drop out, right? There's, as you guys know, it's a very tumultuous time in the world of sports with layoffs. You see them happening, year after year, season after season. However, there are opportunities still that remain out there, and we want to make sure that our members, if they do happen to, be presented with these unfortunate situations, that they have resources and they have connections and they have mentors and other folks that could potentially help them on navigating, these type of situations, right? So again, that's why this mid-career development is something that's key. And by the way, I'm more than happy to share this document with you guys so that way you guys can take a look at it closely.
That would be great.
And then also the scholarship internship programs, right? I know that last year we worked with Frank. We got an opportunity to get BWI Sports, to create that internship. ESPN was able to bring in some students last year. But I think that the scholarship fund is something that's going to be very important for us. And I'll have Danny talk about that a little bit more. And that is because if we look at our colleagues over at the NAHJ side, right, the scholarship jam that they throw, and it just happens to be like one of the biggest, events that they do. Granted, they've been doing this for the last 10 years, and it's taken them a long time to get that. But it doesn't mean that we cannot get to that point, right? We got to take baby steps first, but obviously that's something that's going to be super important for us. And then the other things that, we're working on is the Lifetime Achievement Award. We launched that, not this past conference, but the one before, and we gave that award to Jaime Jarrin. There's definitely a lot of individuals that are worthy of that specific award that have been part of the industry, for many, many years. But it's something that I feel like, a bigger discussion needs to take place on how do we present that? Does that become part of the gala? Does that become part of like something bigger, or does it become part of our scholarship jam if we do that? So again, I'm just making sure you guys are aware of the things that we're looking to continue to grow and develop as we push our strategy forward. Social media engagement, obviously, that's something that organically it helps us. We have our own little Instagram sports task force, that where we post and reshare a lot of the different content that the followers are creating. But again, we want to make sure that as we do something more formal, right? When we do, bios or spotlight type posts, that we can talk to the folks at NAHJ and make sure that we tag them, and then they also reshare that. And I'm talking about more like the specific, like, the branded NAHJ stuff that we do. And then partnership and media. I think that's super important. Both Ileana and I, and Danny and Ed Guzman have tremendous relationships with a lot of our partners from, obviously working at these places. And I think that we can definitely leverage that. We can continue to leverage that, but also because of that same reason, it's why I felt very frustrated with the last conference, because at the end of the day, like, our reputation is at stake. And when things aren't quite working out, then what ends up happening is that they come to us and we're like, if we don't have the answers, then obviously that's a problem. It's not a blaming game. I'm not trying to say that it was anybody's fault, but the reality is that, a lot of them just weren't not happy. And a lot of them were actually even threatening to pull out altogether. Right. And if they pull out, then that means that there's, the revenue aspect and the dollars involved in those instances obviously are something that, we don't want to happen. But in addition to the relationships and everything else. So in essence, this is just, like some of the things that we're looking at and we're talking about when it comes to our overall strategy. And I think that, again, the most important thing is making sure that you guys put a face to the name, that you guys understand what we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish. But then also, like, we want to be integrated more into like what we're doing, so that way you guys are also aware of what is happening with us and understand the importance behind sports and the power that it has. So I'll end there and I'll bring in Danny, so that way if Danny, if there's anything else that you want to add, if you want to talk about the scholarship fund or anything else.
Joe, I really appreciate you outlining everything. Obviously, very appreciative of everybody allowing us to be a part of this meeting and just being able to listen in to the business of the board. I honestly, for the sake of timing, I don't necessarily think I need to add anything because I feel like everything is outlined really well by Ileana and Joe. But if any questions, happy to answer or field anything along with Joe.
One thing that might help the board, some of the things that you were talking about related to the conference are tied to staff, and Neth, feel free to speak to this issue as well. But for the board, and I'm glad you were able to hear the plan that Rita outlined as far as communications, because part of that is also making sure that we are communicating what the task forces are doing to our members, but also making sure that the lines of communication are open between the task forces and the board members. So is there anything that the board can do to address that or provide some assistance in doing your work? And like one of the things I'm thinking about is the survey that the investigative task force did, and how you were saying, Joe, that there's this huge gap, with Latinos on sports teams. And the data question is something that I think helps newsrooms understand, sort of, it gives them clarity as to what those numbers are and what can be done about it. And I'm wondering if maybe there's some overlap or some work that can be done, like with our academic members, to help the task force, the sports task force, do some of this work around getting that sort of data that would help the task force then go make a case to get support for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, no, I think that we briefly discussed the last time that we met, and I think that an opportunity that we have is to basically create the survey, because we want to get a better grasp of where the companies stand, right, when it comes to Latino representation. Obviously, it's very easy to see in front of cameras, but behind the cameras, we just have no idea, other than, again, going back and talking to the folks that we know and asking them, hey, like, how many Latinos you guys have working there, etc. But I think if there's a survey or anyone that can help us lead that, I think that would be fantastic, right? In addition to that, what we're also trying to create is a database as well, because this database, I think it's gonna be crucial for us, not only for communication purposes, but then also just for outreach, and then letting the partners know, like, hey, listen, we have a lot of folks that are part of this, and that's why you should continue to want to be part of everything that we're working on. So if we can have somebody that we can partner with to help us get a better grasp and understanding of the numbers and the figures, from these outlets, I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, that was one of the things, Adriana, I thought of the academic members who have helped the investigative task force conduct the survey that we're doing, that it may be something, why reinvent the wheel? We can take the existing survey that we have and tweak it, for the task force to set up a collaboration between any academic members that are interested in investigating this, and that way they can assist with that. Because Joe, we know it's hard for working journalists, the crazy schedules that we work, conducting that work can be really difficult. And we've got, this whole group of members that focus on these questions around studying these things, issuing reports, issuing white papers, conducting these surveys. So what better way to partner, with our committees and task forces than via those academic members. So Adriana, if you wouldn't mind following up with him on that, that would be,
I will.
that would be great.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right. Oh, go ahead.
So you're like, they're leaving mid-career. Do you know, like, is it after just a couple of years, or is it like after 10 years? And what is it? And it's just that they're not advancing. Like, where are they getting stuck in, like, mid-level markets, or?
It's different, and I'm thinking, at least from the personal experiences that I have, were national based, right? Like folks that worked at ESPN, that worked at Fox, those were the folks that, after 8 to 10 years of service, then a layoff, happened, and off they went, right? Off they fell, off the face of the earth, or some of them ended up like just finding whatever job they could. And most of those folks, I want to say, like, in the last, 5 to 10 years, ended up just moving on to a different career altogether.
And one thing I'll just kind of throw in as well, I spent 14 years at a ESPN Disney before kind of taking another opportunity at Fubo. Now I'm at Spotify. But I do think that there's a kind of a barrier to executive level that is, kind of a big hurdle for a lot of Latinos in at least sports media and in some of the content creation businesses I've worked with, where, if you're not empowered to lead divisions, to, hire and recruit, it doesn't have to be fellow Latinos, but any kind of diversity, it does kind of create a little bit of a bottleneck where like you can get your foot in the door, but then who else is helping you kind of elevate and who's kind of parallel elevating themselves to bring you up even higher. So I think that's kind of one of the unfortunate things about a lot of the layoffs is that people who are probably on a trajectory to get that type of authority may have, unfortunately been cut, not to their own accord, obviously.
Sorry, Marilyn, you have a question?
Just really quick, talking about communication and integration into what we do. I just checked the website and the sports scholarship is not mentioned anywhere on a scholarship page. So I think that we need to make a better effort to try to reach out to the sports task force and get information from them and promote it, in a way that is promoted to everybody, because that's of concern to me, that we're giving away scholarships, but we don't have any consistency or any sort of equal promotion to the stuff. We shouldn't be creating scholarships willy-nilly, whatever it's called, and just then leave it to the device, their own devices. We do mention the Afro Latino scholarship, so that task force, they created that scholarship as well, so we do mention that one, but we should make an effort to mention the sports one and anybody else who might be doing a scholarship.
Yvonne, can you connect with the task force to come up with a plan to make sure that we add that and anything else that they're working on?
Yes, of course. I've just asked Joe to connect with me via email offline so we can make sure we get all that situated.
Okay, perfect. Luis Joel?
Yes, just wanted to ask, among all the initiatives and goals that you mentioned, is there a specific initiative that you want to accomplish this year that you really want to have done by the next convention?
I think that there's a combination of several. I think one of the things that really is concerning to us and has been concerning is the fact that come convention time, everybody's very gung-ho, right? So there's a lot of energy surrounding the convention, but what ends up happening is that after the convention or before, there's not a whole lot of things happening. So for us, I think that programming, like annual programming, is something that's super important. So what we're hoping to do is to make sure that we create either, virtual events or even in-person events where we can even partner up with some of the other chapters, to have these type of programming, what have you, events that allows us to be more visible for our members throughout the year. Because if we're only coming to the conference and then after the conference is done, there's nothing, or then before, then, I feel like we're doing a disservice, to our members. So that's probably one of the big things that I hope. And it's also like an easier lift, in my opinion. I think that some of the other things, like for example, the scholarship, which it's also, one of the big things that we want to continue to push. But I think that just requires a lot more planning and preparation, so it's also like not biting more than we could chew. We understand that we're a small task force, but we're also trying to recruit more members as well, right? There's one of the big pitches that we did to the partners was that they also need to be involved as well, right? It's like you could be in SPN and talking all this crap, but if you don't have some of your members being part of the task force, then I think you just have to kind of like slow your roll, right? Like obviously not in those words, but you know what I'm saying, right? At the end of the day, like, we want to make sure that we create collaboration, but we also need support.
One of the things that also taking an example from the investigative task force that the subcommittee that I'm in charge of has worked on to try to hold newsrooms accountable is to host those meetings with them. Number one, we were asking them to fill out the survey, but two, we were asking them, what are the obstacles? What are the barriers to you diversifying your investigative teams? And for the sports work, the question would be, why aren't you more involved? How can you be more involved? What can NAHJ do? And it's a matter of setting up those meetings. Like for example, if you need the collaboration of the national board to get involved, maybe we set up a liaison from the board to work with the task force to host those meetings with those newsroom leaders on the sports issue, to make sure that they understand that this is something that has the support of the national board, that it's a start of a conversation to make sure that they also step up, because I hear what you're saying. It's you can do some of this work, but really you need to do it in collaboration with these organizations. And the question about diversifying their sports coverage and their sports beats and teams, also comes down to, making sure that we understand what those numbers are and then holding them accountable year to year. So if you need assistance on that side of it, just let us know. And I can talk to some of the board members to see if we can set up liaisons to work with the task force on that.
Joe, do you get support from your boss, from your employer?
Was that for me?
Yeah, Joe, do you get support from your own employer?
Yeah, so no, so I work for Major League Soccer, so we're not a traditional news outlet. And that's one of the reasons why we don't get a lot of that, but I've asked for some support, and it's still, journalism's not a priority, let's just say that.
Right. Well, maybe the board can help you with that in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you for what you're doing. I'm in LA, which is the largest Latino media market, and I see the lack of representation even here. And I'm pretty sure the LA chapter would love to support your work. I know that we've been talking about, we've already gotten one station in town to offer a paid internship for NHJ members, where I'm approaching mine to do one for political reporting, but maybe we can also do some for sports reporting.
Right.
Yeah, I think. But I'd also like to take all of those people at the corporate level to a Dodger game so they can see how many Latinos are sports fans.
Arelis has had her hand up, so I'm gonna go to her next. Go ahead, Arelis.
I think you said mostly what I was hoping to get at. Joe and Danny, thank you so much for your leadership on this. I think part of, if you're noticing, and the challenge of the NAHJ is that, we do have these communication channels that need to be firmed up. But secondly, is that the way that our leadership is structured, that there aren't always clear, chains of command, if you will, or as to who would be your representative or liaison on the board. And in this case, right, particularly with the sports task force, for example, I've got the visual task force, and they just submitted to me their board, what their goals and their vision statement and all this kind of stuff. And we're going to build out a calendar of things that they want to do and the kinds of support that they need. Where do you see the sports task force fitting? What the investigative task force kind of has a life of its own because Yvette and McNelly both sit on it. The visual task force moving forward, because I'm in constant communication with them, and these other task forces work this way. So where do you see the sports task force sort of fitting in? Is it more broadcast heavy? Is it more print heavy? Is it, you would have to tell us based on your membership, again, because we don't have these clear silos, what you would want. And then we can talk about next steps. If I'm going to be your liaison, for example, if it turns out that it's print, we would need to set up a calendar of events and figure out what you can do, and then sit with the various stakeholders within NAHJ staff to make that happen. These are plans that can be made. I'm just curious, who you think your liaison would be. And if it's not an actual national executive board member, maybe it's you're partnering with a chapter and going through the regional directors to make that. But the key is that you definitely need a liaison with the national board for these things to mutually support and facilitate one another.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think it goes back to, again, not having even, any communication with the board for the last 2 years. I've been the co-chair for the last, 2.5 years almost. And we were supposed to have had this conversation, over a year and a half ago. But, and I think that, for us, we can't really say that, oh, it's mostly broadcast, because right now it's really a mixture. It's a good mixture of, print, digital, broadcast, what have you. Also, again, behind the cameras, right? It's not just only, folks that are in front of the camera. So there's a lot of different type of members that we have, but we would just need to figure out, like, who that person would be, right? Because in a way, like, we kind of have like our little life of its own, but then also, again, making sure that we continue to maintain a good standing relationship with the partners is something that's super important.
And I'm gonna jump in real quick, Joe, to piggyback you, because I thought it was a really good question about kind of what is our membership comprised of, and obviously I would hope to have more information as we move forward about our membership and what they're working on. But it is really interesting, even just from the members, the board, like our sports task force. Joe's with the league, MLS. I'm with Spotify, The Ringer, which is digital podcast, video podcast. Ileana and Ed are with the LA Times, which is print. So I think this is like a question that, like, kind of an existential question in sports media. I can't speak for other journalism, but what are we? Are we digital? Are we broadcast? And I do think that that's like an interesting question to just kind of like think about. And I'm interested to hear what Eliana's perspective is on that.
Dunia and then Blanca.
Hello, everybody. Joe, I was pretty much just going to say that in the LA chapter, what we are doing is kind of like forcing all of our coworkers to register. I'm telling them, you want to enjoy the convention, you have to join the membership of NHJ. And I'm discovering a lot of sports anchors, a lot of sports producers, a lot of sports students, and there's nothing for them. So one of the things that I was wondering, and I would like to connect with you later on, I was telling some of our sports anchors that if we offer panels for them, if we offer stuff for them through the year, exactly what you were saying, not only the convention, if they will be more interested. And the answer is yes, they want to be involved, but they don't know where to go. And I just want to get your information after this, and maybe we can collaborate with some brainstorming, because in LA is the city with the biggest amount of teams. We have 15 teams. There are cities they only have 1 or 2 teams. You have here from basketball to MLS, everything. So you have a lot of talent here that are not even aware that there's a sports task force in NHJ. They think of us, and the first thing I get from the sports people is like, oh, I thought you were just news junkies. I didn't realize you guys care about us. So I think learning what you're doing, it's very helpful for the chapters. And I think it was Aureli's that mentioned you should connect to all of the regional directors, because they have direct contact with the chapters. I'm LA chapter president, so I hear it from you, but the other chapter presidents are not here. And we can help you to make those connections and the subcommittees that you need, so you can have, when they ask you again, oh, I have everything. I have digital TV, I have all of them. And we're here to help you and support you, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Sorry.
I'll just be really quick, but I just want to note, we're talking about having a liaison on the board. Samantha Rivera, I don't want to put her on the spot, and I'm not sure if I know she's working, so she may not hear this, but she obviously is a great example of a board member who's in sports. She's broadcast, which you don't have, so I think she'd be perfect. And I don't know, Samantha, can you hear us if you want to respond?
I think Arelis or Julio Cesar reached out to her just now, right?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, no, yeah, I think we had talked about this a while back, Yvette, just about me potentially being that liaison. I would love to do that just because, and meeting, Joe in the last conference, I could see just how passionate he was about all of this. And I mean, it's sad to see that there isn't a high representation of us, and we know we exist, right? And so I think, as long as we have people like this that care about, having more Latinos be represented in something like sports, then we can change some things. But yeah, I would absolutely love to help out however I can. And I don't know what the next steps would be for that, but I'd love to help.
Hey, Joe and Danny, can you provide your contact information, like an email to the board, or I don't know if someone already has it, so that we can already just get this started and get moving? You know, we are so grateful that you're here, but we want to get it going so that we can facilitate all of the amazing ideas that you have. So if you don't have contact for Samantha or one of us, would love your contact. Plus, I've got a student that might be interested in helping y'all too.
I'll go ahead. Yaneth and I spoke with Joe and Ileana, so I'll go ahead and connect Joe to start with. I'll connect the two of you with Samantha so we can start that conversation and get that going. And then in the meantime, if you do want to drop your contact information, actually we don't have the chat open.
I just opened it because as everybody's on, I know McNally needed to share something as well. So if you
can go ahead and drop your email there so that the board can contact you for other questions that they may have. Okay, Johnny and Julio Cesar, you have questions?
I would prefer if that information is shared via email. You know, because I don't have right now the ability to be copying and pasting from the chat. Thank you. So I wanted to commend you first for taking on the time to work on this sports angle through NAHJ. Currently, right now, I am actually teaching a class in journalism, and all 6 students are interested in sports journalism. So it's something that it's needed, and I am looking forward really to working with you guys on the task force. Because even though here in Phoenix at the Cronkite there is a specific program just for sports journalism, I think a lot of the other universities don't have it. So it's really important that we basically bring that into the fold and start helping them out with contacts and specific programming during that convention just that pertains to sports. And I think that a lot of people who go to that convention are hoping not only to land a job in journalism, but particularly in their field, which in this case would be sports. So a lot of the people who actually go to that convention are seeking that first job in sports journalism. So thank you so much. I just wanted to make that comment and make myself available. That way we can kind of collaborate as you guys go along. Thank you.
Julio,
I really appreciate that. I was just gonna say something real quick that I appreciate you mentioning that, because as like somebody who's looking for talent, young people up and coming, the Cronkite School is one of the best, you know, opportunities to get young talent. So I look forward to, even just in a professional manner, connecting with you and meeting some of the students at some point, and you know, learning more about the program and the students in the program.
Great, thank you, Danny. Last comment, Julio Cesar, and then we need to move on to the next item. Go ahead.
Yeah, so hoping that the next item is the actual voting on the on the committees, but
we're not voting on it, but go ahead. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, this thing just told me I was going to lower my hand. What I was going to propose was, when we finalize the committees, we officially, you know, list Samantha as chair or liaison with, you know, Joe and Ileana still as the leaders, but then Samantha's shepherding, you know, the work that they do. That way it's official, it's on paper, and it, you know, formalizes the responsibility.
Yeah, we can do that. So I'll just repeat what I said earlier. We're reviewing. So all of these committees and task forces have already been approved from last year. We're reviewing them to see if any one of the committees don't want to continue their work, or if we need additional ones. And yes, updating, what we do need to do after we have that discussion is update the website, because there have been some changes, like Melissa stepping down from the strategic planning committee as chair. So we will be updating the website, and I would say I would leave it up to like Samantha, if she wants to be listed as a liaison on there, we can do that. I mean, as long as the task force knows who that liaison is and can communicate that to their members, we can either add it or not based on what what Samantha prefers. Okay. All right. So let's move on to reviewing that list. Oh, actually, no, wait. I spoke too soon. McNelly, I had asked you if you could just share quickly. I know we're 2 hours in, or almost 2 hours into our board meeting. Can you share just, I wanted you to share some of the highlights of the investigative task force, because you did, we did start the launch of the essays this week. So if you can share that with the board quickly, that would be great.
So I just shared the links to the essays. Let's just quickly like recap, because this meeting is taking a long time. So the task force, as you know, I have 3 subcommittees, and we have been very busy the whole year. One of the committees have from day one, done a lot of training throughout the year. So this spring, for the first half of the year, they did a series of chats, webinars called the Watchdog Corner. And those were like very popular. The last one was in Spanish. So as Yvette was saying, that the subcommittee that she shares with Diana, and I'm also a member of that because that's a managers committee, has been really busy working on the survey. And we decided to release the preliminary findings during the conference because it was the best platform to let people know about, our preliminary findings, basically showing that the lack of Latinos in investigative teams and also in management. And it gets worse with the LGBTQ community. So that was a really interesting finding that we were not surprised about, but I'm sharing it here. So we had a press conference on that. And last year we started, talking about ways that we can put our voice out there. And the essays were part of that brainstorming effort. And B.A. Snyder, before she left us, I gotta give credit where credit's due. She helped us, the links with Pointer, they agreed to publish the essays. So I've been managing this project, which is what I do at the Center of Public Integrity, but other type of projects to get these essays published. And we published the first 2 essays this week, which have been gathering dust for months and months, right, Yvette? We wrote those last year. And then next week, we're going to have 3 more. And the last installment is going to be after next week. And those 3 are going to be in Spanish. And many of our members decided to participate on this. I gotta thank Luis Joel and David Cordero for writing los ensayos de su trayectoria personal, de cómo llegaron a ser periodistas. So, estoy bien encantada. Y también tenemos a la doctora Mercedes Pigón, que es la que nos ha estado ayudando con los surveys. Ella es profesora en la universidad aquí en FIU. Ella también está escribiendo un ensayo personal en español. So that is the really rundown summary that I can give you. And anybody who wants to join, you know where to find me. People find me on Twitter all the time. I might be starting again a huge Twitter thread, although Twitter is not what it used to be. Like I did last year, and that's how a lot of people approach us and they got involved and engaged. And I will be doing that again very soon. The end.
Ellie, short and sweet. All right. So on the committees and task forces, are there any committees who feel like their work is complete? They would prefer to sunset out the committees? That's the first question. No, everyone wants to continue. I mean, a lot of the work that we're doing is aligned with the strategic plan. So that is, my hope and goal, that we continue this work. And as you all saw with the discussion with Rita, we've got a lot on our plate to not just do the work, but communicate the work that we're doing. And so I didn't, from the folks that I was talking to, I didn't hear from anyone that wanted to be eliminated or sunset their committee. Are there any additions or new ones? Some of them are empty, like as you saw, the audit and investment committee is empty at the moment because you see on the agenda, we're going to be voting on the appointment of the financial officer. But other than some of those empty chair positions, are there any new committees that need to be formed? Okay. So then the only thing I would ask for, since we already voted on this last year, the only thing I would ask for is for the committees to go back, if there are changes in the chairships or the vice chair positions, or new members that need to be listed in them, because some of them, like the strategic planning implementation committee, needs to discuss who's going to step up as chair, that anyone on the board that makes those changes, please communicate them to Yvonne within the next 3 to 4 weeks so that we can make sure that by the end of September, the website reflects whoever has stepped up into those new positions. Sound good? Okay, all right. The next item on the agenda is the financial officer appointment. Geraldine, you're still with us. Thank you. So I shared with all of you Geraldine's background, but just to let our members know, she's a senior producer for NBC News now in New York City. She's also served as financial officer for NAHJ prior from 2018 to 2020. She's also continued to volunteer for NAHJ on our bylaws membership task force. And previous to serving as financial officer, she was also Region 2 director. She's a founding member of the New York chapter, where she also served as president and vice president. I also happened to serve with Geraldine for 2 years on the national board when she served as financial officer. So I saw the learning curve that she went through to become that financial officer that provided that oversight that I know Marilyn has worked so hard to implement. Geraldine has stepped up and offered her her services in this position. She's connected with Marilyn and had discussions about what we talked about at our last board meeting, which is implementing the recommendations that Marilyn is going to be turning over to the next financial officer to ensure that some of the policy changes that we need to make sure to make sure that we provide that oversight for ourselves and for the staff and for whoever's in this position as a board are put in place. So I am pleased to make the recommendation of Geraldine as our next financial officer. And I would first want to open it up to see if anyone has any questions of Geraldine. Oh, Julio Cesar, sorry, just saw you.
Oh, absolutely, no worries. I'd like to welcome Geraldine, hopefully back to the board. I'm really glad that we have someone who's not starting from zero. Like Marilyn has explained to us many times, it's a very particular job. It's a lot more involved. Like the financial officer and the presidency are the two positions that are the most involved with the organization. When it comes to board positions. So I'm glad that Geraldine's not really going to have to learn the job from scratch. Obviously, she still has to learn the things that have changed since she left. The changes that Kelly made, the changes that that Marilyn has made. But I'm glad she's not going to be starting from scratch. One of the things I wanted to ask Geraldine, one of the things that we mentioned earlier was the audit committee that Marilyn, started or wanted to kick off and structure. It's empty right now. So what kind of members, not necessarily names, but what kind of members would you look for to fill that committee?
What is the committee again?
Well, this is the
audit.
These are the advisory committees that can be comprised of members or board members that we created. Number one, for the audit process, because best practices recommended for nonprofits are not that the executive board be that audit committee. They recommend that you have a separate audit committee. So we created this advisory committee so that the financial officer could choose people to serve on that advisory committee. And then we also have a financial investment advisory committee as well.
Yeah, I think I would like it to be partly of the board and part of the members. I think we should be tapping to people who, you know, like for example, in the investment, some people who are, you know, like more informed or who deal with investments more often. You know, one thing that comes to mind is some of our business reporters that we have as members, right? That either work for Bloomberg or CNBC, who could, you know, advise us to what they're seeing and what they're experiencing that could benefit the organization. And then I think if any of our old members, I mean, I would have to look into it, but if any of our old members like left the business and are doing now, you know, CPA work or anything like that, we could tap into some of those people as well.
Super hot.
Johnny, I think you're unmuted, but go ahead. You have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying hello to a coworker. Yeah, no, I wanted again commend you for running again. I wanted basically, I think I have two questions. Why are you running again? And second, what did you learn from your first run that you think is gonna help you? Maybe it was a mistake, or maybe it was something that didn't work out that's gonna make you better this time around, better prepared.
Well, as to why I ran, you know, I feel like I left not necessarily because I wanted to leave, but rather because, you know, I felt like having a second child was too much with the demands of the work that I was doing for the board, right? And I feel like if you can't do a job well, then you shouldn't do it at all. So that's really the reason why I left, right? I enjoyed my job in the board. And the second reason is, so that's the sort of why I left or whatever. But, you know, Yvette basically approached me once, I think Marilee announced that she was leaving and said, hey, would you consider filling in and at least for the year and finish out her term? And, you know, I was amenable to that because I think it does two things, right? One, it helps me sort of finish where I left off a little bit. You know, there were things that we needed to do for the financial officer for Nation and finances overall. Like, I remember that we needed, and I don't know if that has gotten done, but I believe it hasn't. But we needed like a new credit card policy, right? We needed a travel and expenses policy. And I was in the process of starting that when the pandemic hit, and we basically couldn't, you know, a lot of the bulk of the job of the board at the time, if some of you who were there remember, it sort of became, well, how do we survive in the pandemic? Like, do we hold a conference or not? And I think a lot of the effort sort of turned to that. Anyway, so I never got a chance around it. I think there was like not a lot of help in that front at that moment because I also needed to talk to the lawyers. There was a lot of things happening, and basically because of what was happening in the country and in the world, it just never came to fruition, and then my time ended basically. So I never got around to that, and I would love to sort of finish what I started, one. And two, in terms of lessons learned, I think going back a little bit to what Rita was saying about, you know, we really need a more strategic way of communicating. And now that we have the staff, I feel like there's a lot of misunderstanding of what the actual finances of NAHJ are on the members. I feel like I did a great job at telling the board what we had and where we were standing and what was what. I don't know that message ever got across really to the membership, you know? And I think it's important to make sure, and whether it's an email specific with finances that we send out to people, or whether it's a video that we do with some graphics, you know, treat it like a TV package. It's a minute 30, and like, here's where, you know, an explainer of like, here's where our finances stand. I think that's something that I would change because I don't think people understood and still don't understand like what is the financial standing of the organization and where are some of the needs, right? So, and Blanca's telling me that I have to wrap it up because
Yes,
there's only 9
thank you.
minutes left.
Oh, goodness.
Yes,
I'm
thanks.
actually telling everybody, I can't extend it. I don't know what's going on. I think it's because I already extended it, but I put in a new Zoom link in case we do run out of time. Sorry about that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Blanca. Are there any other questions? Okay, all right.
I have a question.
Ellie, go ahead.
Geraldine, when Alberto Mendoza resigned and he announced his new job, there were a lot of congratulations going back and forth on Twitter. And one of the things that he said about you is that you are one of the best financial officers he's ever worked with. What do you have to say about that?
I mean, I actually don't think I ever saw that message, so I didn't even know that had happened. I'm not great since becoming a mom. I'm not great at social media. Well, I'm flattered. One, you know, I had no idea that that's how he really felt. But two, one of the changes that I did request was I was like, or the way that I was thinking it, you know, to try to make it a little more lane of terms, right? I was saying, well, if the conference is our big money maker, why does the finances don't reflect that, right? Like, why are our reports so convoluted and it's so hard to understand? Anyway, so we made changes to one, simplify it, make it simpler for people to read. But I also, I was, often I would be the one saying, hey guys, it's the new month. I need the expenses of the prior month for the president and the executive director, right? So, and I think I was straightforward. I had a schedule every week and every month of the things that I needed to get done for the position, and I was pretty strict about that. And I had a lot of communications with the president and with also with Alberto about the finances, with Sarah. I met with the investor, the woman who used to carry investor account. I believe she passed away actually. Anyways, I'm sorry, I didn't make that up. I was like, did she pass away?
Yes, she passed
Yeah.
Yeah. So Christina was her name, I think.
That's right, Christine.
Yeah, was it Christina? Yeah. Anyway, so I make sure that I understood what I was doing, or at least learn as much as I could. Again, I think there's a lot of changes that are needed in order to make the function of the finances or the financial officer one, more streamlined, easier to carry from member to member. But anyways, I like I said, I'm flattered. I didn't know that's how he felt. And maybe that really meant that I was doing a really good job. So,
All right. Any other questions? Okay. Do we have a motion to appoint Geraldine as financial officer?
I move to appoint Geraldine Cuellar as the financial officer to serve the remainder of the term.
I'll second.
Who was that seconded? Sorry. Arelis? Okay. All right. Any more discussion? All right. Blanca, can you go ahead and do the roll call on this?
You're muted.
Blanca, you're muted.
Hi, sure am. Thank you very much. Yvette.
Yes.
Arelis.
Yes.
Julio Cesar. Julio. He's
I
frozen.
think he's frozen.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. McNally.
No.
Dunya.
Yes.
Luis Joel.
Abstain.
Adriana.
Yes.
David.
Abstain.
Sarah.
Yes.
Melissa.
Yes.
Samantha.
Yes.
Nancy.
Yes.
Christy.
Yes.
And I, Blanca, yes. Did I miss
All right.
And
anybody?
Johnny?
Johnny,
Johnny?
sorry, I had you as not being here, and then I know you're here. What is your vote?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
All right, did we get everything? Okay.
Mm.
All right, the motion passes. Blanca, how much time do we have left on this Zoom link?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay. Quickly, let's everyone transfer over to the next Zoom so we don't run out of time. We have the public session next, and then we're going to go into executive session. So does everyone have the link that Blanca just put in the chat? Okay.
I also put it in the general. Yep.
Okay, transfer over to the second link first, and I'll see you in a few minutes right there. Okay, everyone, we just have one item before we go to public questions and comments, and that is the approval of a corporate resolution to update our banking accounts, to add Geraldine and remove Marilyn. And Julio Cesar, were you able to drop that document into the folder?
Yes, it's in the folder, and I'm gonna see. I have a very slow connection right now. I'm also gonna put it in the Slack just in case people don't have access to the folder currently. At everyone.
Okay.
Okay.
Does everyone see the document?
I see it.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's essentially the same thing that we just approved to remove David, add Yaneth, and this time it's doing it just for the financial officers to make sure that Geraldine has access to the bank accounts, and that Marilyn, who's now ex officio, is removed from the accounts. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. I have a motion to approve the certificate of corporate resolution to update our banking accounts?
I move that damn it, I almost got it. I almost memorized what you said, Yvette, and it just flew out of my brain. I move that we sign forward the corporate resolution to add Geraldine, our new financial officer, to the accounts. Does that work?
Yes.
Okay.
And remove Maryland.
And remove Maryland, yes.
All right, do we have a second?
I second.
Oh gosh, I didn't see who that was. Who was that?
Nancy.
Nancy. Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Nancy.
All right, any questions or discussions about this? Okay. All right. Blanca, can you do a roll call vote on this too?
Yes. Yvette.
Yes.
Adelis.
Yes.
Julio Cesar.
Yes.
McNally.
Yes.
Abstain. Dunya.
Yes.
Luis Joel.
Yes.
Adriana.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Sarah.
Yes.
Melissa.
Yes.
Samantha's gone. Nancy.
Yes.
Christy is gone, right? Johnny. Did you leave? I know you had to leave. Johnny, are you still?
I'll abstain because I'm in an editorial meeting and I couldn't hear what
Okay.
we're talking about.
Okay, and then Blanca, yes.
Okay, did you get everyone?
Julio is in chat, said yes.
Okay.
I think, yeah, okay.
Heard him. All right, motion passes. Okay. Thank you, everyone. We have public questions and comments now, but I am not seeing anyone that has joined us.
There was nobody other than the task force people prior to that, so.
Okay. Okay. All right. So do we have a motion to go into executive session next to discuss contract and personnel matters?
How do you say that?
Make
Present a
a
motion to move
the meeting into
to
executive.
the executive meeting.
All right. Do we have a
Second.
second? That was that Elise? Okay. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Hey, does Geraldine stays, right? She's now part of the board, isn't she?
Yes, go ahead. Geraldine, I'm gonna forward the for the rest of the board, I forwarded a link to the executive session. Geraldine, I'll forward that to you right now too. And we will return and alert the membership via Twitter when we return to the regular session after our executive session. Thank you. Hi, everyone. We are back from executive session. There are no action items to vote on. So we're just going to wrap up with new business. I just want to make sure, are there any other new business items that the board has to share? All right, so if there are no other new business items, the only thing I need to remind the board that our next board meeting is November 4th at 12:30 p.m. Pacific. For the regional directors that have not put forth their alternate candidates, just a reminder that you need to reach out to someone, have them submit their letter of interest and their resume so that we can approve them at our next board meeting. I want to make sure that all our alternates are in place at that point. All right, and that's it. So we can just close out the meeting now. Thank you all for spending your Saturday with us. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.